Hello, and welcome to the How I Tested That podcast. I'm your host, David J. Bland. I'm an author and advisor, and I'm fascinated with testing early stage ideas. I've helped companies all around the world, and in this podcast, I connect with entrepreneurs and innovators who had the courage to test their ideas with real people in the market, with sometimes surprising results. Please join us as we explore the ups and downs of experimentation together. In this episode, I'm joined by Courtney and Slava Borisov, the co-founders of Puptqe. What started as a deeply personal response to a health scare involving their dog Champ has grown into a unique retail experience built around community and creating memorable moments for dogs and their owners. We explore how they tested their way through one of the most competitive retail categories imaginable, discovering that success wasn't about competing with big box stores on price or selection. Instead, they focused on creating experiences that customers couldn't get anywhere else, from dog-friendly events and memberships to immersive in-store moments designed to turn visitors into loyal advocates. We also get into the realities of building a brick-and-mortar business, including lessons around site selection, customer retention, community-driven marketing, and the surprising acquisition channels they tested to help them grow. Courtney and Slava share how they learned to stop trying to serve every pet owner and focus on their ideal customer, transforming retail from a transaction into an ongoing relationship. If you've ever wondered how to test a physical retail store in a crowded market, this episode is for you. Enjoy my conversation with Courtney and Slava. Welcome to the podcast, Courtney and Slava.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you. I've been looking forward to this conversation all week. I was doing a bit of research on what you were about, and I thought, oh, you have such a fascinating story. And I'm sure along the way, not everything went as planned. And I kind of wanted to use this as an excuse to dig into stuff with you. And then our listeners are going to learn from listening to you and what you went through as well. I'm just really happy to have you here and have you hang out with us. And I guess before we jump into testing and all that, if you could just give the listeners a little background on yourselves and your story.
Yeah, I'm Slava. My background is in commercial construction and franchising. I did that with Menchie's Frozen Yogurt here in Los Angeles, California, where they were just an emerging brand with maybe a dozen units, and had the opportunity to be when they went to 300 units in 2.5 years during the yogurt war. So it was really exciting from A to Z. And then to have a commercial construction company now and doing Puptqe full time and franchising that business now.
And I come from more of the marketing and sales aspect. I was in fitness, and then I moved into marketing, which is what I love. And that's how we actually started Puptqe, bringing that together and using Slava's skills and my skills to create something because of our dog.
Brought us together.
It's amazing. So maybe tell us a little bit about Puptqe and what it's all about.
So it actually started a few years back. Our dog Champ had flatlined in the hospital, and he was revived, later diagnosed with Addison's disease. And that sparked something that we wanted to create something that celebrated that special bond with him and with other dogs. So it started as an online business. And then one day, Slava said during our wedding, hey, we have a surprise coming in 9 months. Which we had no plans to open a brick and mortar, but that surprise was actually a brick and mortar store. So in 9 months, we got married in February, and in November, we opened up the first Puptqe.
Yeah, and to add to that, on the brick and mortar side, when people were looking at it, and they still are, the looks from one camp is dying off the vine, the retail side of it, right? And on the other camp, there's a massive investment into repositioning retail, making it more experiential, more entertainment. So we wanted to take a space where majority of when it comes to pet retail is really non-emotional and all transactional, right? You come in, there's a bunch of shelves, you get what you want. You might make an interaction if it's your local boutique or whatnot, but think of Petco, PetSmart, Pet Supplies, and so forth. There's really nothing there instead of just a transaction. So what we wanted to do is make it interactive, experiential, and entertainment. And that's why the entire store is designed that way, and the entire concept and the customer journey from the time, even on this podcast that you hear this, hopefully go into our virtual tour, we would give folks a lot, go into our Instagram and come into our store. So it's an activation point than your typical distribution channel where retail was in the past.
Oh, that's interesting. I want to dig in a bit about that. Before we do, I'm always fascinated about, you both were in different spaces before coming together and creating this over a great cause. I'm wondering what skills you had from different industries that ended up helping you in creating Puptqe? Like, what was it that you pulled forward and you're like, oh yeah, this is a different context, but I know maybe how to approach this because of what I've done before?
I think one of the biggest skill sets, and it's universal for myself specifically, is learning to make adjustments really swiftly and quickly. And I think not just that's a skill set everyone's going to have in the future, but in a sense of growing from, say, 12 units and seeing it to go 300 in frozen yogurt. We made a ton of mistakes, but we also, I would say, made directional changes quickly because we're smaller and being nimble to do that. So I think that's one of the biggest skill sets, especially as emerging brands or even mature brands for that matter. You have to be able to take, I want to say a risk, but corrective action swiftly, quickly, and live with the decisions that you make with the information you have. I think that is a skill set that can be developed over time, but it's something that you can't just be taught. You have to experience it.
Slava and I are like a yin and yang, but it works so great with Puptqe. I think one of my skill sets was the one on the marketing side, but prior to this, it was more corporate type of marketing. So it was very straightforward, very bland, and very boring. And with Puptqe, got to be more creative. And I love using that part of like creativity, trying new things. And then the art of that has been fun. And then also the community aspect. So being very family oriented from Hawaii, but using that skill set to really bring that community together that we have at Puptqe, that comes from our memberships to also the community that we leave with the hospitality aspect.
It helps give perspective on things. I love when people jump to different industries, but underneath it, there's a commonality that maybe doesn't seem obvious at first glance. I like, Slava, the way you framed making decisions. That is something I'm really focused on in the companies I coach. This idea of, hey, given what we knew at the time, we made the best decision possible, and let's not revisit it over and over and over again. And like, what if we had this information, we made the best decision we could, and let's just move forward from that instead of revisiting it, which I think some people get stuck in the, well, if I'd known this, I might have done something differently, but none of that really helps you at present time.
I think Colin Powell said it the best. You have to have 70% of the information to make an informed decision. Anything past that, it's analysis paralysis, and then it's regret. You're doing a postmortem when a postmortem is not necessary. The entire market could change completely. And I think this is where retail is dying, is they're like dinosaurs to move and be experiential and change to the consumer's needs, not to their own needs. So it's really interesting what we're seeing now.
Yeah, retail's going almost through like a inflection point at the moment.
Yeah.
And I want to get into that a little bit. But let's go back to, 9 months, brick and mortar store. What were some things that you tried early on that worked and some things that didn't work early on as far as like setting up that store? Because I imagine that's a huge endeavor. Obviously, you're pulling from your past experience, but what are some things you tried that went well and some things that didn't go so well early on?
I think the main thing is when you come into a massive category like the pet industry and you're looking at it, and the way the traditional path forward is obviously discounting, coming into it, getting folks in to acquire that customer. And I think that was one of the biggest mistakes we made, and we tried and we tested. And then you don't create a differentiating factor. Yes, we had hospitality. Yes, it was a unique community store. But what we did is we said, what are we the best in the world at? One thing. And we were considering doing grooming, daycare, and so many things. So I said, we're the best in the world providing hospitality and entertainment for dogs, even niche. So I think niching down specifically and being the best in the world at that one thing, then taking the traditional retail model, instead of being distribution, when you come in, buy whatever you need to, we created it as a marketing activation channel. So online and offline served itself as a flywheel effect. So people come in store online, get activated, and then the lifetime value of that customer goes maybe from a year, a couple times a year, to we had a customer purchase 100 purchases with us. Just keep in mind, over 365 days, that's 2 purchases a week. So what that says is, and that customer becomes a word of mouth advocate in their community. So I think that's the number one thing when we learned is we're the category leader now. We created for dog entertainment and experiences, and we kind of set the rules and the tonality around that. And as we move forward, we're seeing a lot of people come into that space, which is exciting. That means it's validating what we're doing even further.
I think we also try to please all customers rather than our ideal customer, whether that be from the marketing standpoint or even from the sales standpoint. It was all driven to all customers in general. And that was something that we had to learn. And it took us about a couple years to really dial down and say, no, we have an ideal customer profile. We service everyone with the same hospitality and the same customer service when they walk in. But as far as our memberships and services, it's for an ideal customer. And that's really what we learned along the way.
Well, there's 70 million dog owners in America, right? And not everyone's our customer. You have the Petco, PetSmart, then you have the Ultra, Boutique, Beverly Hills. And I mean, we service that in the middle. And we service, going a step further, is providing the entertainment experiences where we have over 60 to 70 events on our membership base per year. That includes paint and sip with your dog, Dodgers watch parties. We have trivia nights, bingo nights. The idea is it's an activation point. And I think that's the biggest thing is taking traditional retail and saying, this is a media store. It is not a traditional retail. And what media is, it's activation, and it starts the entire flywheel once they step into our store from day one.
I like that niching down concept. I've been giving keynotes recently at different conferences, and I've been telling this kitty litter story where I was on a startup reality show in the Valley, and this woman, Carly, and her co-founder came up and pitched me on this idea of cat litter. And I was like, oh, it's such a crowded market. How are you ever going to survive there? In my head, a lot of this was going on. And then, of course, speaking, I was trying to reserve judgment. And it ended up becoming Pretty Litter. And it was acquired for like $1 billion. And I was like, oh, okay. So this niche down of course, they said, okay, we're going to deliver the litter. It's going to help monitor your cat health, was kind of a unique value prop because cats hide their illnesses. And I just realized pretty early on in my career that I can't pick good ideas and bad ideas, that people pitch me. It may sound like a bad idea to me, but who am I to judge your idea? It's more about what's the risk in your idea, go test it and go find out, with some extreme exceptions. But for the most part, I had no idea that was going to be $1 billion company. I'm sure a lot of investors that passed on it wish they had not passed on it as well. So I just think you niching down and saying, of course, that's a crowded market. And I'm sure you got a lot of feedback of like, oh, don't even try that. You're going up against Puptqe and PetSmart. In your journey, it sounds as if you kind of had an open mind and you're willing to create a new experience, almost like maybe even creating your own market by going just very specific. We're going to be best in class at this specific thing.
Yeah. We took in reverses, the retail store, Puptqe, people come in for the products and they just leave for the products. For us, people come for the experience and the products are built into the customer journey. So it's like going in Disneyland. When you leave Disneyland or Disney World, you feel guilty if you're going to buy a t-shirt or souvenir. You do. You're like, oh my God, I had a great experience. Why wouldn't I grab something? That's kind of the idea that we put in. Obviously, it's a shorter duration. People are in there maybe for half an hour in the store to an hour. But that's the idea. It's the products are secondary. The transformation is always the first thing that we trying to provide in the hospitality experience side of it.
I like that. So maybe double clicking a bit in here, what are some of those really early type experiences you tried to test? And maybe just give us a little bit of insights of like, oh, because you have limited resources. There's so many things you could do. What are a couple early things that you found worked and some other early things that didn't work so well?
One of the things, and I'll let Courtney add in on this, but we wanted to strategically, first, we didn't have the capital. And second, we figured out strategically, we didn't want to run any ads for like Google ads and Yelp ads like Puptqe and PetSmart were. So fast forward 2 years now to this day, if you Google Temecula Pet Store, we're 1 or 2 on Google and Yelp. And PetSmart and Puptqe are both running ads on both those platforms. But if you're looking at an organic thing, what that creates is validation, authority, authentication in that marketplace. So we've had folks never been foot in our store. They'll go on Yelp, they'll see parties, and they'll go on Instagram. They're booking parties for $300 by just that validation by somebody else. So the point I'm making is we tried. Actually, we didn't try. It was out of limited resources. We're like, hey, we can't compete against the ad spend that they're doing. But what we can do is provide great hospitality, put that process in place, and being an ethos, not an afterthought. Like Puptqe now is trying to do that, but it has to be built into the customer journey. It can't be an afterthought. So that was what we tried, and it worked really well.
I think another thing was, we tried. So one thing on the marketing and the sales side to bring more awareness and being new to the market, one, and also in a community that we weren't familiar with ourselves. We tried doing everything. And sometimes when you do everything can go wrong or not as how you thought would plan. So we were doing events. We were sponsoring booths outside the store. We were going to places that were far out from where we actually were. We were spending resources on not necessarily UGCs, but something like that, like those type of campaigns. And we realized everything was not going really anywhere. So we really focused on now the community aspect, which we learned is a much better approach to everything.
Well, the customer has a loudest voice, right? A customer's voice is a 10x effect compared to any campaign that you could run to acquire that customer. Any dummy could acquire a customer, and we're seeing it with VC funding. Can you retain that customer? What's the lifetime value of that customer? If you're not providing them value, you're not going to have that, and you're always going to be running on against CAC and your ratio, CAC to LTV. Right now our CAC to LTV is about 60 to 1. Just to give you an idea of that is once a person comes in, our flywheel is really sticky. throughout the entire journey. And it's not sticky. It was thought through, but it was because of the hospitality and the foundation that we've laid from the very inception, out of necessity, by the way. I think if we had the resources, we would have tried to compete with Petco and PetSmart, and we wouldn't have got to this point.
But we're really focused on retention now. So going back, instead of doing a bunch of events and going to all these shows and booths everywhere, we're really focused on the retention aspect. And once that customer comes in, having them come back again and again. And I actually did a report today and I looked at some analytics. And if the customer shopped with us at least once, so the average is that they've shopped with us 9 times in the year, which is a pretty good return. And that means they're stopping by at least once a month for a pet owner who has the dog food, dog treats. But that was something that we had to learn, and it took us a while to learn. But I'm sure a lot of business owners are the same way, creating more problems for themselves, basically.
It's easy to do unintentionally. When I started advising companies, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, we can do paid ads. But that only gets more expensive. If you get addicted to that early on and you start scaling, it's not like you spend less on paid ads. That number usually gets bigger. And we just had a guest on a couple episodes ago where we talked about metrics. We were calling them pirate metrics. If you're from corporate marketing, you probably know this, but it's like AARRR. So it's like R, that's why it's called pirate metrics. So it's like acquisition, activation, retention, revenue. I liked what I heard when you said, oh, now we're focused on retention. And that leads me to believe that you've probably figured out that you've been doing this a while, a little bit about getting people into the store and getting them active in the store and activating. But it's that coming back part. Obviously, you could spend more time on acquisition and activation, but if they're churning out and they're not coming back, it's kind of like you're just on this leaky bucket kind of thing. I like that you are focused on retention because it leads me to believe that we now have diagnosed that's where we need to fix. I'm sure after that, there's going to be some other place in that funnel that you're going to need to work on. But I liked when I heard retention.
You know what we were focused on? There's so many different platforms you can use: Google, Instagram, Meta, Facebook, TikTok. But where we found the most success, at least in the last 6 months, was actually through Nextdoor. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Nextdoor app.
I am, but not in this way.
Because we're in the pet retail space, because it's very community-based, in the communities that you're in, you're able to communicate with all the like-minded individuals or people who have pets, or connect with business owners from the partnership side that are in those communities. And it creates that wheel of connection that you won't find on Instagram or TikTok per se. So it's a different method of marketing that actually is working for us. And it's also something that I'm seeing more people, the more I'm on it, I see ads of very similar type of service-based companies that are in the pet space, whether that be pet waste, pooper scoopers, or a grooming aspect. I've been seeing more people run ads that way as well.
I also think as a VC capital, there's plenty of dry powder available on the sidelines, but as interest rates increase, the CAC has not been funded through the rounds. Once everything gets shown up, you have to have the retention. I think a lot of even investors are figuring that out too. It's like, well, we can't fund CAC where your CAC to LTV, going back to that, is a 2-to-1 or a 1-to-1 ratio. Yes, you could be growing sales, but you're actually not providing any value, or you having repeat customers. So I think the holy grail of any business, and you know this as well, is repeat customers. And then those repeat customers telling other customers. But to create that does take a lot of energy, effort, and a lot of trial and error and testing, a lot, to get the ICP right too, you know, because not everyone's our customer. That's okay. We love everyone who's a dog owner. We love everyone who's a pet owner. But I think identifying your ICP and leaning into that, I think that's really important.
I remember going to a session where they were talking about a fish finder startup. And they were trying to define their ICP, and they're like, oh, it's fishermen. Of course it's fishermen. And what they realized was there's like subsegments. There's a group that obviously is their segment. And then there's a group that to their core of their being hated the idea of their product because it told them where the fish were. And they're like, that is not sportsmanship. Like, we're never going to be your customer. It's really interesting. Like, even as targeting pet owners, I imagine there are all these different subsegments. And then you had the person that comes back, every couple days. Obviously, that's probably more of an outlier. But then you have people that maybe come back every month. And so there's almost like different subsegments, I imagine, in your business. And I was thinking through, when we think about how you market to those, Nextdoor, could you explain maybe a little bit more about like your approach on there? Or is it like the services? What's your take on Nextdoor?
It comes from the personal and then also the business aspect. So from the personal, It's very interactive where people are very vocal. It's like another Facebook, but a little bit more up to date into localized groups. So there's those groups, and also the communication of people asking about recommendations on dog things or for groomers or for pet products in general. So that's where the one-to-one and just communication with strangers in your community comes into play, and you can talk about Puptqe and even posting about that. So if I'm posting like a party or I'm posting in the store, the dog bar on my personal page, I'm seeing the engagement that way. There's on the other end where you have your business page where it's more driven to when we do rescues, because that's very community-based, or just events for the public so they can see that. It's not like our main primary driver, but we can run ads through that will show up on everyone's individual feeds. But what we did was a lead catcher, so people would be able to come in. If they're localized in the community, they would come in and maybe redeem a treat or something. When we first opened, we tried the other way where we did the mailers, and we mailed out a bunch of mailers to bring in a free treat. We're a new dog boutique. We just opened. Bring this in for a free treat. But our return of investment wasn't that great, to be honest. So this has been a lot better for us in terms of not getting lost in the marketplace and really centralized, because it's something unique in those communities too.
And I do believe on Nextdoor, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not like Instagram or Facebook. You have to have an address, so it's geo-targeted to that address. So for example, if you're in San Francisco and you want to get a Nextdoor account in Los Angeles, they won't allow you to do that. So you have to have a physical address. So what it creates is an authentic community compared to business in Kansas right now, Kansas City, and just run ads there or pretend like I live there. Over there, geo-targets it. So I think that's another more of a niche type of group settings, which you get a higher retention and you get better interactions through there.
Before I even joined Nextdoor, I was getting recommendations by someone who was also in the mall talking about Nextdoor and everything. And then I searched our company in that area because it's geo-targeted to our address. And people were talking about it before then. Oh yeah, there's this place at this location, or they also throw dog parties or this and that. So it was definitely a resource of recommendations that people weren't seeing on Yelp or Google or, the traditional places where you search things of places in the area. This was just real life recommendations by other community members who are within that small mile radius or maybe up to 25-mile radius.
Yeah, I wanted to dig into that a little bit because you're the first group to bring up Nextdoor in our podcast series. And I just wanted to learn more about that. I'm sure our listeners did too. Sometimes we hear, WhatsApp more recently and Reddit and subreddits and things like that. But Nextdoor, probably people are sleeping on it.
Oh, we use Whatnot too. I don't know if your listeners or if you use Whatnot, but that's something that we also do to drive visual traffic, but also just bring more awareness to the store.
Whatnot's really cool. Who doesn't know what it is on this podcast? It's like a TikTok shop, but it's a standalone app where you can do live shopping, engage. And so what we haven't mandated is for the employees and our franchisees, when they're doing it, creates number one is training. They're physically talking to somebody for 30 minutes on a video camera. They're selling that product or membership, and they could go back and watch it. And it's free, by the way. Brand awareness in your marketplace. You're talking about, you're driving traffic to your store, to your site, which is great. And the third is if you sell something, it's revenue. So it's not just a revenue side. It's a free platform. And we've really knocked out 3 things that are extremely valuable to any retail or any business getting live training in real time. It's awesome with customers on the other side.
Wow, you're the first to bring that one up too. I'm pretty sure you're educating our listeners on what it is as well. So thank you for that.
Think of it that way, until I was like, what training program could we do? And all of them were like, $500 a month and this and that. I'm like, well, we could sell stuff. We could get training. The video gets recorded. The employee could go back and watch it themselves or the manager and give them tips and improvements and collaborate. I said, this is a win-win-win.
Everyone else is on TikTok Shop or like Shop Live or TikTok Live. And that's just a scrolling platform, right? You're in between watching TikTok lives and then shopping and then also just watching TikToks. This one, you're literally just on to watch live shopping. Yeah. So that was something that we explored. And it's been fun. We've been doing it for the last couple of years.
And our franchise partners love it when they're getting on it. When the first time we said, look, immediately from day one, before you even open your store, you get training from day one. Start talking about your market, start talking about your membership, start talking about the products, even if you don't have any live products. Start talking about your market.
I like that approach. That's fascinating. I was wondering, because you're in the physical space, I've helped some retail companies in the past as well. But tangential to that, I'm up here in Northern California, and we had this little cafe roaster open about a couple miles from my house. I came in and I was like, oh, how they designed the actual cafe, it's almost like a honeypot for Instagram in a way. Like there's swings and there's like vines and there's all these cool little nooks. I'm sitting there trying to work, right? And I'm watching people come in and they literally, I mean, they do buy stuff, but they come in to take pictures of themselves. And I see this at restaurants sometimes. When I travel abroad, I see like, oh, we have a swing in a wall and people like sit there and take pictures. I'm wondering like, what's the equivalent of that for what you're doing? Because you've designed this experience space. How do you go about thinking through or evolving your design or testing different designs? Maybe you share some insights about that.
From day one, that was the idea, is to create this 1,000 square foot store, the design to be a stopper for each section and to be a moment to be captured, shared, reshared on Instagram. So for example, anyone that's listening could go to Puptqe.com, do a virtual tour on the website, and they'll literally, our current flagship store in Temecula, and go through and be guided through that store. But the first thing you walk in, you have this beautiful custom doghouse. We have grass on it, so it looks like you're in a park. There's a park bench there, so it doesn't feel like you're in a store. Then we have the world's first 8-inch pup bar with 4 bowls in there. We serve pup cups, and those pup cups, they're just like crumble cookies. We rotate the flavors every week, and they're totally free. You come in for the experience. We have dog beer and dog wine that we serve non-alcoholic, a little novelty item, and then you turn around right behind you. There's this beautiful photo booth that changes every season, whatever is coming up. And we take a Polaroid. So we try to keep it offline as much as possible. You take that Polaroid, put your dog's name on it. You could take it home with you. We have a star wall, this beautiful star wall, and you could put it on the star wall. And then the entire store is designed that way where anyone who's listening could do the tour. The shopping experience is integrated into the wall. So it feels like there's no shelves on the floor and everything else. So when you're shopping, it's a very intimate experience. It doesn't feel like you're shopping. And there's stoppers throughout the store. So the idea is when the customer stays in the store longer than 15 minutes, their average order increases by 27%. So if they're having a great experience, everything's tailored through all these micro moments from the design element intentionally, but not manipulative. I think that's the most important. You come into a lot of stores, if you go to Vegas, they pump oxygen into the vents and everything else. That's not what we created. We want to create an environment that's very photogenic, and it creates this flywheel effect that we mentioned earlier. And then they're doing the marketing for us, essence.
That's incredible. It almost makes me look at my pet supply shopping in a different light. Now it's like, oh no, I'm just going into a big box store now. I just gave a keynote for IKEA, and I was talking to them about how they design things and how they test through. And they're really pretty advanced at how they do retail experience and everything. When I work with big companies, the case study I was talking about another retailer I worked with, and their stores are so giant. Membership-based stores, so like you buy a membership as well, which narrows probably down my example. What I've noticed, and maybe you've thought of this already, there's like no onboarding whatsoever. Like if I was building a software company, I wouldn't just have you sign up and just dump you in and say, go figure it out. Like there would be an onboarding process. And I'm noticing with these retailers, it's almost like there was some crazy stat where when a new member arrives, it's so overwhelming and they don't know where to go and they just follow whatever else people are doing, and they'll follow them around the store. And there's something like an 80% chance of when they come back into the store, they're going to follow that same track. So if they didn't explore like 3/4 of the store, they're never going to explore that. And then the chances of them renewing the membership are pretty low because they didn't get value out of the membership because they didn't explore the store. I know you don't have that scale, but it sounds as if, just from hearing you describe it, like you were very thoughtful and intentional about what the experience is going to be for somebody that walks into that store for the first time and what you want them to experience.
And that's another thing too. We initially compressed the footprint to 1,200 square feet and pack everything in and make that experience touch point. Is we'd rather have more of these compact stores, and like you said, is have a 30,000 square foot store, 20,000 square foot store where you're going to get lost in there, where the experience should be with short attention spans, an uplifting experience for 15 to 30 minutes maximum. And then when you leave, you come back, you get activated again. And or if you go to your next community over, and there we could scale a lot faster than opening a 20,000 square foot facility. You say in Northern California, we maybe could open another one in Southern California. You know what I mean? We don't have the comparative where we could break it out into smaller cities and smaller communities.
We talked about how you approach this. I think you're being very thoughtful. And of course, you learn some hard lessons along the way, doing things that maybe were a bit scattered and just trying everything and seeing what works, which, I mean, obviously we all do. What is one thing you thought was like a sure win, but then it just kind of fizzled out? Like it wasn't exactly the way you wanted it to be.
I think the sure win is from the very inception, real estate site selection. And I'll bring it up to that is thinking you know where your customer lives and where their psychographics are, what they believe, their behavioral patterns, not just their demographics. You could look at demographics, their income level, their age, their sex, and so forth, and it could hit everything then. It wasn't a mistake, but we went into a place where we thought our customer lived there. There was a Williams-Sonoma Pottery Barn, and it was within a traditional shopping center that was outside. We found out really fast that obviously the psychographics, yes, they have the belief system, but they're going to go there once a week or twice a week max for entertainment type of thing. And malls at that point, they're being repositioned, right? They're being more experiential. They're being more thoughtful. They're bringing things in your traditional mall. So I think that was one of the things where we found our customer on a daily basis is in the Whole Foods, obviously plazas, in the Vons, things like that, where they're going there daily for their daily activities. I wouldn't say it's a huge miss, but it was a great learning experience to understand. This is for everyone listening. Your brokers, or if you're going to brick and mortar, or if you're opening anything else, a restaurant, is you can have the best demographics in the world, but if you don't know your psychographics, which is how they behave, what they believe, and that could change, by the way, too, really quickly. And it has, right? In retail and restaurants, we're seeing QSR not dying off the vine, but people say, I don't really want to eat fast food as much anymore, or I don't want to drink alcohol as much anymore. How do you make that adjustment? And I think it's really important too. For us, it was the real estate site selection. I think it wasn't a miss. It was just something where we didn't think that through because we just wanted to open a store.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm sure our listeners can learn from that. I feel like you have a lot of quantitative information for what you're doing in retail. For the qualitative side, talking to customers, what are some things you do? Maybe Courtney, you can explain. Are there situations where you're talking to them or interviewing them in the store? Are there ways to get that feedback and kind of understand not just the what, but also the why?
I think from that standpoint, as far as interacting with the customer, since we have a membership and we've been going back to the retention aspect, that we've had our members stick with us for some of them now up to 3 years in just one location, is that they are very open in providing feedback. But all the conversations and all the feedback that we do get, it's really transparent. Customers and members are not afraid to share how they're feeling and what they want to talk about. And I think one thing, it's because we've created that welcoming environment from the beginning. We always say we're different, and we are different because of the hospitality aspect. And I'm not saying that because I am a part of Puptqe. It really does make a difference from how we train our staff to our experience. And our staff got trained by the Ritz-Carlton management and got to work with them as well. So they got a whole experience on how to greet the customer, how to talk to the customer, how to make the customer feel very welcome. So that was a huge part in terms of the retaining aspect of a customer. But I think from the feedback aspect and keeping an open feedback loop, it's really keeping it transparent. And of course, you're going to have those customers that come in and they want to complain about everything. And you work through that.
Well, I think one of the things to get feedback loops on, we've done this, is through the customer journey. Our customer journey, it looks very nonchalant and fun and everything, but it's extremely, extremely intentional. It's rehearsed, it's practiced. It's like a production. What we implemented is super on their customer journey. Surprise, unique, personalized, engage, and repeat. Literally, we have zones for zone 1 being the greeting and welcoming everyone consistently 100%. And through that entire thing, you're discovering about the customer and you're personalizing it and you're engaging, you make it unique. These are all touch points throughout this customer journey. And at the very end, we do another greeting, thank them for coming in. And then intentionally, we now implemented receipts. The paper receipts are not there for fun or everything. Yes, someone wants a receipt, but it's the last touch point. They could write something. They could be thoughtful about it. So all these little micro touch points, that is feedback loop that we get. And it creates that much more of an LTV for the customer to come back and share that story, hopefully in their community.
That's impressive.
One thing that we did learn, and I think other listeners can learn from as well. So we had a monthly membership, and we thought that monthly membership would do so well. For us, it's like, why not? This is a great value. Like, how do they not see the value in this? And we kept pushing that. And one of the consultants for the membership company we work with, she broke down the numbers. She's like, just stick to the annuals. And since we've stuck to the annuals, it's shifted our whole entire approach. But also it's allowed us to retain the customer longer as well. Because instead of just having one customer sign up because of a discount or to sign up because of another reason, that's just one purpose. Now we have a customer who's our ideal customer that will see the value and also create that flywheel effect for the referral aspect as well as the membership aspect in general. But that was a huge lesson we learned.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel as if the membership does unlock things for you. So for example, when I was consulting with bigger retail companies with memberships, we could do things I mean, granted, it's a longer test, but we could say, hey, how did people who went through the onboarding versus the people that didn't go through the onboarding, how did they renew? What was the compare and contrast there? Also, what size of cart? For people that went through onboarding, there's some really interesting things you can do. Granted, annually, it might take a while. So you need leading indicators that like, oh, can I predict that person's going to renew or maybe not? But it feels as if because you have kind of this testing mindset or this analytics mindset that you can do a lot with that. And it helps inform your direction a bit more than just say a retail store that's purely transactional with no annual membership.
I think one of the things majority of brands make, and this comes from the top because it's so much pressure because of the stock price, or if they're public or if private for growth because of investors. When it comes to memberships, we train this and rehearse this as when it becomes a cost, an expense line item, instead of an investment, and you can communicate that, you breathe that, and you do, hey, this is an investment. Here's what your return is going to be on that investment, X, Y, and Z, and here's what the potential could be. For example, I'll give a story to listeners. We had two random people walk into a store, a woman and a guy. They come in a year ago. They signed up for the membership. They did one event together with their dogs. They started talking. Now they're getting married a year later. They're having a child together. And when we laugh about it, is that investment worth it? So you got to paint the picture as if you think it's just a cost for that member, you're going to have a hard time because that's the entire personality and the staff members will say it. But if it's an investment and you're providing value every single visit, people will feel that and that vibration will be translated.
But you don't have to be a member to shop with us. That's something that as a member, you get added benefits to attend events and get the added discount, which of course we still have that customer that shops with us that's not a member and will still come by and enjoy the space and have their dog enjoy the pup cup. So,
but I think that's the shift to make, you know, from an expense cost to an investment ROI for the member.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I've been reading the pre-release of Eric Ries's new book, Incorruptible, and he goes through all these stories about how people tried to build companies and then they weren't set up in a way with governance and everything, and he's got a big list of why. But then they can't really serve the customer, or it gets like a hostile takeover or something happens, and no matter how hard they tried, it wasn't hardened enough to be able to push back against all those forces. Just hearing you speak about how you're treating the customer and how the customer is at the core, I find that you're building something special. I'm wondering, what gets you really excited in the future? Like some things you want to test, where you see this going, you know, it could be franchise related or store related. Like, what is something that gets you all excited about? Like, oh, I'd like to go test this next.
High level, big picture, there's going to be much more dog owners, but there's 70 million dog owners, right? Our store, for each location that we open, we want to service 200,000 people in that area. Those are just dog owners. So we have the ability into the US alone to service 140 million people. Obviously, one or two dogs they have, and then we'll add other animals like cats into that hopefully down the road. But that, I think, is really exciting. And the thing is, we could do it really quickly and swiftly through the franchise model growth vehicle, much faster than we would through even a VC type of approach where it's all in-house. So that's, I think, the exciting part about it. And using it consistently, we've simplified the entire model. And we always talk about the simplicity will win. You know, Chick-fil-A does not sell hamburgers and In-N-Out doesn't sell chicken sandwiches. They're the best in the world at what they do, and they're the most successful in what they do because they're so hyper-focused. So I think that's an awesome opportunity. If you look at the big landscape, how massive the TAM is, and we have a SAM figured out for each community, I think it's fun. That's what makes it really fun.
This is more big goal, but I did see on LinkedIn today that Puptqe, they talked about their jet and they said, oh, our partnership with Jet Suite X, or whatever it was. And then it just clicked in my head that someday, very soon, Puptqe will have its own jet. So dogs can get on there as Pup Pass members and be able to explore all the other Puptqes across the country. But last month, we launched something called the Pup Pass Passport, which is basically a passport for dogs that has different stamps. So the more locations we open, it's a destination stopper, but every time they visit the pup bar, attend events and so forth. But from that passport, that really sparked. And I saw that LinkedIn post. I'm like, this is the motivation. If I don't see anything more clear, it's like, this is a sign that this passport and all the Puptqes across the country, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I appreciate the big vision. It's like big vision, tested small.
I think the vision, when it comes into place, it's having that in mind and always communicating that to your staff, because at the end of the day, it's easy to get stuck somewhere or have weeks or even months. It looks like nothing's moving forward, but I think the hardest thing is the consistency day in and day out and doing stuff that might look boring, and it is boring. But I think consistency with grit and obsession always wins.
I think that's a great wrapping point for this one. I would just want to appreciate you hanging out with me. I was looking forward to this for a reason. I knew it was going to be a great episode. You all went through your previous journeys into this amazing cause of what prompted you to create Puptqe and how you're thinking about it. You're very thoughtful about it. It sounds like you're very open-minded in how you're approaching it. I'm wondering if people are listening and they want to reach out to you and would love to connect with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
The best thing is through the website is puptqe.com, Puptqe.com, through the contact page. We're also just launched our franchise, and we have a lot of franchise partners coming on in Texas, California, Florida. I mean, we're looking for great partners that understand the same thing, community-based, want to have the entrepreneurship freedom with this uncertainty that's going on with AI and what's going to happen. So we're looking for folks that want to be the community ambassadors and activators, the mayors of their town, so to speak. And that's really fun. And finding those candidates and those folks now, it's a joy and it's been exciting.
Great. So if you listen to this episode and you want to reach out or you're interested in franchise, then get in touch with Courtney and Slava. I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I had a great time, and I'm sure our listeners learned a lot about retail and how to think about it in a slightly different way and test their way through it. I just appreciate you and thank you for your time.
Thank
you, David.
Thank you for listening to another episode of How I Tested That, where we share stories about experimentation, tips, and tricks. If you learned something new, please recommend us to a friend or colleague. And remember, keep testing your ideas.